Somebody's in here, sitting in here today. You won't do nothing, ain't got nothing to say. But if I were you, I wouldn't cheat myself. If they don't want to go, you can't wait for nobody else. Thank them tonight because raise them tonight because yeah, come on and let's have a time. Come on and let's have a good time. I said to come on and let's have a good time. I said to come on and let's have a good time. I got one little question today. Did you come here to have? All right, you're live here with the NAACP presidents. This is your local branch president, Eugene Collins, alongside here with our statewide president, President Michael McClanahan, is here in the house today. We also have Miss Sateria Tate, and I'm going to let her introduce her team here. And they are doing some phenomenal things here around violence prevention. And, you know, just their work, man, they're doing some real layman stuff out there, and responding to murders as they go, just really pounding the pavement, trying to make sure that we do something about these murders in Baton Rouge. And she's going to be talking to y'all a good bit here today, so I ain't going to steal her thunder, and I'm going to let her introduce her team in a second. But before we get to that, we're going to start out with what we always start out with, President McClanahan, with some news that you can use.
Gene, good afternoon. You know, normally I have some news, but because I think this issue is so important, you know, every day you hear on the news about some violence, some form of violence, gun violence, domestic violence. I was sharing with someone a couple weeks ago, man, our communities are traumatized and have been for a long time. And so you have the community, the neighborhoods traumatized. The kids, when they go to school, are traumatized. The parents, when they go to work, they're traumatized. When they come home, ride the bus, it's so much trauma going on, man. It's a wonder, man, that our communities haven't imploded from inside out, man, and something has to happen. I do know there are teams and groups of persons that are, you know, doing something all they can, but is it really enough? Something is better than nothing. I understand that, but only until it hits your door, come your doorstep, do you think something more needs to be done? And just trying to get people in the same room to start talking about solving problems. We can talk about issues all day long, but the key would be to start talking about how can we solve these issues. What are some things that we have doing, that I'm doing, that we can double up our efforts? You know, I've often said the problem with us as a people, you put 4 or 5 of us in a room, you have 4 or 5 of us with hidden agendas. And so nothing really gets done. We revisited this same program, the same issue, the same program 6 months or a year ago, and we're still back at it. At some point in time, persons with at least a little common sense could say, look, for the greater good, you know, I don't know what I have going on, but I know what we can do together. And so I welcome our guest here. You know, I've been knowing Shatira for a long time. And so I know she's been consistent. What's one thing that our community needs is consistency. A lot of times we start out doing stuff. Over time, you know, 3 months, 6 months, we kind of die down and we'll fall by the wayside. But our problems are such that we don't need to have on, you know, these quick flying shoes. We need to have on, we need to become marathon runners, because it'll get you. But the other part to it, it'll get you. That's why we have to work in teams. The problem is too big for one person. I would never try to tackle something like this by myself, because I would become a statistic, because it'll weigh me down and I'll lose my mind and probably go to Southern Men and sit there and cry till I die, right? But so we have to do something. I applaud those that are doing something. I think there's room for our faith-based community could do something. You know, there's room for all. Just trying to get us all to the table, 1, 2, and 3 of us to the table would really be the guiding light, would really be the catalyst if that could ever happen. So I welcome those that are doing some of this work, man, as God sent. I can tell you now, it's not without its distractions, but, you know, I want to tell you all, encourage you all to keep fighting the fight of faith. And there are some, as you fight, as you all know, there are some going to come. Mm-hmm. I tell Eugene all the time, I said, when you get somebody to come in, you get them to put them to work. Let them do what they can while they can, and somebody else will come along later on. But use them while you can. So I welcome you all to the program today.
Thank you so very much. We are grateful to be here.
Man, so sad. I think President McClanahan's really hit it on the head with what he said. And y'all are out there doing some phenomenal things. Like when we in our bed at night and we're asleep and, you know, like we ain't even thinking about this stuff, y'all are getting alerts to respond to these murders. Like y'all are actually going out there on the scene, comforting the family.
Absolutely.
Being that resource for them. You know, and not without trials. I mean, like this wasn't easy work. And I remember when folks met with me and you think about this team, are they gonna push through it? I said, I know Soteria leading it. And that's all I need to know, right? Because if you know Sat, you know Sat don't know how to fail.
Well, there's no iron team, though. It takes a strong team to make it happen.
Yeah, and you have a great team. I'm really impressed. I tried to recruit one of her team members last week.
we take them.
You gotta share talent, right? But Sat, you know, I just want to give you an opportunity to introduce your team and tell us what y'all do, because you know, like you guys have gotten a lot of positive press lately, and for good reason, because you're doing good work. And none of this other stuff. We could talk about everything else and the work that NAACP does and all of that stuff. But I really personally believe like work like this is the backbone of what we're doing, because we can't stop each other from killing each other. Nothing else really matters. That's right.
And it's on us. It's not on anybody else. But first, I want to say thank you all for having us. Yep. We certainly appreciate, you know, the opportunity to sit here with you all and discuss this very important matter. I have two of my team members here. I have Ms. Dana, the queen. I'm sorry, the king. Ms. Dana is our high-risk interventionist lead, and we have Mr. Spencer here. He is one of our HRI. As you mentioned earlier, a component of what our team does is respond to homicides and major crimes. So it doesn't matter what time of the day, the night, the morning, if we get that call, if we get that message, Ms. Dana's team is the team that responds. We are there to provide support to the families. Right. We're there to supply support to the victims in the event that it's a victim that, you know, is not deceased. So that's just a small part of what we do. But there's the more proactive components that our team is responsible for. And those components look like just being in the community. We are boots on the ground, day in, day out. We recently got into two of the schools that are in our area. We are at Capitol High School. We were contacted by administration over there. They have a lot of wonderful things going, but there were some things that was happening in that school that drew concern. So now we're here. We are offering support to not only the students and the parents, and we're also in Mastruma High School. We are very serious about this work, but I do want to say this: it's going to take more than just our team. We're a team of 11 total, including myself, but there is so much work to be done out here, and there's so many things that I think we have enough organizations, nonprofits, individuals that can come in and help to do some healing. You said something earlier, you know, about the trauma that our community is experiencing. That is so true. It's like we see the end result, which is the violence, but there are so many different things that contribute before you even get to that point. And that's some of the things that my team is starting to unpack as they're working with the families, as they're working with individuals. They're starting to see the trauma that's so deeply rooted and trying to work with some of those things.
So let's unpack that for a second.
like, cause you say the different traumas, and I'm gonna lean to this brother here, cause I know Sack is probably gonna be able to walk it down, but I would love to get the perspective of your team. Like trauma, like what trauma do you think is causing some of this? And because I totally agree with what Sat says. When you go out in the community and you work with them and you get to see them, you get to touch them, you understand that there's so many other things attached to that. Like, and I hate when folks are judgmental because they'll look at somebody and say, "Well, she got 8 kids by 8 different baby daddies and all of that stuff."
But what happened?
You don't know why, right? You don't know the trauma that led her to that. It's almost always attached to some trauma, right? So that's just what it is. So we don't look at our communities the way, and a lot of times because we got folks out there in our community doing the work that don't really know what they're doing,
right.
or not really out in the community. They just say they are. But y'all are actually out there. So not today, but we'll bring y'all back and let's touch on it. But like, brother, what trauma are you seeing that's leading to what we see, and that's the deadliest year that this city has ever seen?
Well, I believe that we all are affected by trauma in some sort of way. It's a sad situation in regards to having to respond to some of the violent situations we respond to. That doesn't really stop right there. I mean, trauma affects us all, and what we do is we try to provide. We try to provide resources that can combat some of the trauma that's affecting the community. It's really a situation of just being willing to open up about certain things and facing what's the most scariest to you. It's about opening up, and I guess until we all just get on one accord and be able to do that, then we just gonna have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, we're seeing so much. We're seeing generational trauma. We're seeing trauma that's brought on by violence that, has been passed on. We're seeing just environmental trauma, where you have people who, are living in circumstances that there's a significant amount of divestment in those areas that, they have to live with the impacts of those things. That's trauma. We have the music, we have the media, we have so many different things that have created the narrative that we're living inside of. And in a lot of ways, that narrative has started to been believed by us as a people. So those are things that, we got to start unpacking as a community. And I don't want to take over. I know, Ms. Dana, you probably got some stuff you want to add to it.
Ms. Dana, I want to hear from you. I'm gonna come around to you because Ms. Dana, I don't want to say you're an old soldier because you ain't old.
But she's a soldier though.
But you've been out here doing this work. Like I encountered you like a long time ago now, and I think at that time you might have been in the community doing outreach around HIV. So you've been like pounding the pavement. You know the community knows you. You've been doing this work. Like what changed over the years? How did we get here?
What changed is, in my perspective, I say the OGs changed. The younger kids in the neighborhood stopped looking up to the OGs, and the OGs turned a blind eye to them. They didn't welcome them like when we were growing up. The OGs told you, no, don't do this. They kept you away from doing the wrong things when they saw a talent in you. They weren't scared to voice their opinion. Like, don't do that. Don't do this. If an older lady across the street hanging out, you're not playing loud music. You're not coming through here with your pants sagging.
You ain't cussing.
Right. You're going to respect Miss Sally on the porch. And it was all about community. Miss Sally may have needed her light bill paid or her water bill paid, and the community actually did that. Mm-hmm. But once that love and that connection inside of the community changed, that's when a lot of the blind eye changed and a lot of the crime started to rise.
It became me and my three instead of us, all of us.
If it doesn't affect me, it doesn't affect me,
But the problem is it don't affect you until it affects you.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're seeing. We see the opposite of that. We see the ugly side of that every day.
Mm-hmm. And Dana, like I remember some years ago, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but Dana was on one of my outreach teams, right? And like we pounded the pavement, and the format is very similar to what y'all do, right? We established gatekeepers. It was a public health approach to solving at that time the issue was HIV and STDs, and we used zip code level data to figure out what to target the high risk communities. We went out into those communities. We identified gatekeepers as people that actually live on those blocks to gather the information to find out where we need to be, where the hot spots were, where the tree was that everybody hung out.
We call those LTOs.
Yeah, LTOs. So y'all do it
License to operate. That's right.
But it's essentially the same concept. And when I look at it, and I thought about Dana the other night, because I'm like, Dana didn't really work this on all sides of it, so she gets it. And then you see the team members you have like my man Knowledge Tyson, right? You see Riddell out there with y'all now, folks that actually get and understand
the
these
community.
And it's good to hear that y'all talk about like the other things that are attached to this trauma, and it doesn't. It's like where does it stop? Because
I think we ain't gonna get there. We're looking at where it stops. I think we gotta go to where it starts, and we need to kind of navigate that angle, because what I've seen is oftentimes we're looking outside of us for solutions when solutions are us. So that's right, we're the solution. So we have to really and truly start there. We have to start with accountability of self. That doesn't mean that all of the things that, contribute to our conditions aren't important. It doesn't mean that they aren't, devastating to us, but it means we have to really come together and have that village again. We really got to come together and, start to, elevate ourselves. And that's through support. It doesn't mean that, we have to create something that's this big, huge, whatever. It means we got to start with self.
Start with self. That's a good one. President McClanahan, any thoughts?
I was listening at Dana talk about, and that's the same concept we've had. Coming up, we were always one family.
That's right.
At some point in time, there was a breakdown in the family structure. And then, I'm always been what happened to the black male, because so goes the black man, there goes our families.
That's the head.
And I love women, and women do a phenomenal job. But we were set up to be ran, led by men.
Our men are our head.
And
that's
so
the head.
when young black men have no black males to look up to for guidance, because I was raised in a single family household for the most part, and my uncles and my older cousins were always there to kind of lead and guide me. So when you don't have that, or if your uncle and cousin is guiding and leading you in the wrong direction, you follow them in the wrong direction, because ain't nobody else to tell you what's right, what's wrong.
Exactly.
And so we have to get back to that. But the other problem is that society, it helps take away the black man from the house, because when there is some stable housing, you say the black man can't be there because he doesn't want to be in the house, right? And so that's just another way to break the family up. And then you have jobs, crime, sitting in the jail for a little weed. He likes to smoke a little weed, but he goes to work. Now you give him now you tell him he can't smoke when you give him 6 weeks or 6 months in jail, lose his job, he come out. What is he gonna do?
But let's be real though, that Ivy League white college student is also smoking weed, but if he gets caught, he's not gonna have the same level of punishment as, duty on the corner.
But that's how society is broken down, and we should always talk about, the twos and the threes. But for us, so it says I can't do it. Right, so I can't do it because I know what it's going to do to me. Right. I'm going to do my damnedest to kind of stay away from it, because it's never going to be a fair fight. And if it was, they would change the rules in the middle of the game any damn way, right?
Every time.
And so we have to, at some point in time, be a little bit smarter till we can get at least a little bit ahead of where we are. Right now, we can take 2 steps forward
and
take
4
3 or
steps
4 back. Right? And so I still believe that education is going to be the key. I think, these programs where you get young black men and women without a whole lot of education to certifications, because if you give them great opportunities, I can, if I make $15, $20, $30 an hour, that helps my family.
Exactly.
Therefore, we start experiencing stuff we had never experienced before, and we can move. We become mobile. We can no longer stay in the hood and the
That's right.
inner city that's
right.
crime ridden. You're right to that. A neighborhood where broke down cars have been there. That broke car been there for about
10 years.
yeah, it's still there. Right? That lot across the street been grown up, still there. And so we become numb to that kind of stuff. We think this is what it's supposed to look. And if we go to a neighborhood where at least the grass is covered, like, oh, we've arrived. It's a nice neighborhood. But that's just around the corner, on the other side of the street. And so the divestment is there. But we have to take a greater pride in our own community. I remember when I was at the community center on Gershung Avenue, we had some kids in a program. And I said, what's wrong with your community? And they would say, it's dirty. What if it's, we can fix that. You know, we can fix that. So every Saturday we would go out, pick up paper, paint stuff. That's something you can do. Change the aesthetics starts to change your mentality.
That's
too.
right. If you're walking past trash every day, all day, your mind starts to, that's right.
Yeah, right. So there's some stuff we can do. I applaud y'all, man, because, you know, just attacking this problem every day and you seeing very little of any change, man, at some point in time will weigh down on you. You know, as persons that have been out here a while, seeing this stuff, it'll weigh down on you, man, at some point in time. Like, where does it stop? When will change happen? And I like to think, even from my perspective, I'm going to beat this while I can. I may not see the result that I want to see, but somebody will. I'm just going to keep hitting this rock
Until
right
you
here.
pass the baton on to the next.
Keep hitting this rock.
President McClanahan trying to get canceled here today, but you know, because I'm gonna keep it real. Like when you say like, you know, we need men to want to be the head again. People don't like to hear that, right? And it's like you said earlier, Sat, other folks and told us what we supposed to do in our community, and that stuff ain't never worked for us.
Right.
And I know we in the middle of a hot girl summer. And
We're in a hot girl summer.
But see, President McClain, I don't even know. But
that's not even for us.
Yeah, it's not for us, right? Because that kind of stuff never worked in our community. Like, but how do we go out and have those conversations with young brothers? I think that's where we start, is getting men back in the home.
Absolutely.
Telling these men, hey, go out and find a wife. Not 5 or 6 girlfriends. Go get you a wife. Telling these young ladies, just don't look for the car. No, go find you a husband and raise them kids, right? But we can't say that nowadays, because not then we
You're preaching.
You're preaching.
You're judging.
What they call it, trick shaming. And all of that stuff.
I ain't heard that one.
Yeah, I've heard it, right? But we don't want to have those conversations because this crap ain't never worked for us.
Nope.
Like we were the model for families. Like we were the model how that stuff was set up, right? And you know, socially, I'm a sociologist. So I studied like back then it was different. Like if somebody came in, if mama married a man, that was your dad. That's just what it was. And you might have called him Mr. Jim, Mr. John, or Mr. Jake, but
you respected Mr. Jim, Mr. John, Mr. Jake.
He was in charge. But now we teach our kids something different. And not to say that is right or wrong, it's just different. So when you look at some of these things in our community that seems to be new to us, we cannot just leave out how new our practices are. And what we practice is very different than what our grandparents practiced,
Definitely.
right? And I'm just gonna keep it real. These folks bought houses, bought vehicles. My grandmother's always
with little to no education,
almost none, right? Brand new. My grandmother always talk about this brand new LTD she got right off the lot. And she said, "I went and bought it cash." And you youngsters got to go down there and finance everything, you know. and like you said, 6th grade education and never financed it. She said, "I went and bought it cash." And you youngsters got to go down there and finance stuff because y'all at the bar buying drinks for 5 or 6 women.
But let's think about it too, though. You know what? Our community, we spend $3 trillion a year.
Oh yeah.
You know, think about if we actually invested that $3 trillion a year. Think about what that would mean. That's transformative. That would transform our community. But it's cultural now. And the problem with that is it doesn't happen overnight. This has happened in time. So it's going to take what you said earlier, consistency. It's going to take that. It's going to take us. It's going to take you. It's going to take the viewers. It's going to take all of us to start turning that thing. It's going to take all of us to start, impacting the way that we think, the way that we move, the way that we do things. That's where it's going to start with us.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, Sad. Because when we look at this problem again, like we've never had these issues. We are not a violent people. We've never been a violent people. We let, and I said this at your program, we let folks come into our churches, burn them down with our kids in them, because we weren't a violent people. Never historically have we been a violent people. Sure. So there's some new American stuff that's been tossed to us, right? Some stuff that we don't totally get nor understand. But I really believe it's got to be there with rebuilding the family back and having those conversations with these youngsters. Like, have your little fun, but when you get yourself together, don't be 45, 50 years old talking about I think I'm ready to settle down. Right. Some stuff done pass you, right? You got 6, 7 kids out here. You can't. And we want to talk about Willie Lynch. Whether you want to talk about the factual nature or not, because some folks say it's not real, but we can see the theories in itself.
The theory is in practice now.
Definitely in practice. There's one section I read where it talked about that if you take the African American male, and they say use another word in that, right? If you take that black male and you pit him out with many women, he'll never be able to be father to any of them, right? And you control the system that way because you have this man with 25 kids, so he can never have a personal connection with none of them, no matter how hard he try, because it's out there, right? Or if you get this sense of, well, you know what, I can do this all by myself. I don't need a husband. And sisters don't think that I'm downtrodden, a single mother, because I am not. I am not saying that you're not doing a phenomenal job. I'm just saying that's not the way it was intended. And that's not what our grandparents did.
It sounds like he just preached a sermon right quick.
I'm just keeping it real.
Yeah, I think he did.
I'm just keeping it real. Like, we want to look around and say what's different. Y'all, we different.
That's true.
We different, and I ain't speaking for perfection, because some of this stuff I need to work on myself. But but that's what we is. Like, we're doing stuff very differently, then asking ourselves, why is it different?
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's just what
so
it is.
we changed it, because oftentimes we sit in rooms and we have these discussions, but we don't follow up with solutions. And I think that what we've also seen as a result of that is that our community has become lethargic. They're tired of talking. They're tired of saying the same things over and over again. They're tired of broken promises. And so they just don't respond. And the only way I think we're going to be able to get through that is to do what we say we're going to do. That's one of the things that's extremely important about our approach when we're in the community, when we are reaching out and mentoring, some of, the folks that we come across. We follow up. We make sure that we deliver exactly what we're saying we're going to deliver. But this is much bigger than what we're doing. This is what we all have to do. Like, we got to stop just showing up, having these nice little, events, taking pictures, shaking hands, and keep it moving. We got to come, have these events, take pictures, shake hands, give people what they want so we can give them what they need, and continue the process. Continue to be there when the cameras are gone, when the news is gone. We need to still be there. That's the only way we're going to see change happen.
I'm going to go to Ms. Dana, because Ms. Dana, she may remember somebody named Ms. Helen Jackson. Ms. Helen Jackson was out of Plaquemine, Louisiana. Miss Helen Jackson, I used to go over there and eat gumbo with Miss Helen Jackson, right? Miss Helen went on the community. One of the teams we led, they were responsible for doing outreach in the Plaquemine community. So I went over there and made Miss Helen Jackson my best friend. And once she found out I liked to eat, she just started cooking for me. Like, hey, I got some food over here. Right. So I would go over there and talk to Miss Helen. Miss Helen kept me up with what was happening in the community.
That's right.
And I learned from a mentor of mine, the Reverend A.J. Johnson. He talked about you don't have to be from the community to be of the community. You just need to get in the community. You got to get in the community. And I remember just building that relationship with Miss Jackson because she let me into her community.
That's the key.
And she was the gatekeeper for me. And those are old school things that black folk we always have done. Like, we didn't need to be from Glen Oaks. We had a cousin in Glen Oaks. We need to be from the bottom. We had an auntie that lived down in the bottom. We all were family. Like this turf war, that's some new.
This lady right here is a testament to that. We can't go nowhere and people don't know her. I don't care. Right. We go to the top, the bottom, the underground, the overground. Everybody know her.
Everybody know it. And I'm going to tell you, Ms. Dana probably remembers this, when we used to go out back in the day and we look for HIV cases, when we got into those zip codes were always 70802,
70805,
70806,
Yep.
70807.
Yep.
They were always those zip codes no matter what.
Yep.
And when we started matching up the data, those same zip codes were number one for truancy, number one for poor educational outcomes, number one for
Under the poverty line.
murders. They were also number one for food access. So it's talking about the stuff that President McClanahan talked about earlier, that all of this stuff started to connect, right?
Exactly.
So we want to put some onus on our people to do better. We
And
need to do
see,
better.
what you just said
But
just sheds
some
light
structure
on
stuff.
the fact that this has been happening. This isn't a new thing. This is how it's been. So what are we going to do to change that? What are we going to do to start shifting it? That is the biggest question. Because y'all, that was how many years ago when y'all were doing that work? 10 years,
15,
right?
something like that.
Here we are, 10 years. 10 years later, and we still having the same problems in the same zip codes. You know, this is something that we have to change. There's no Band-Aid approach that's gonna fix this.
Yeah, I mean, like, and they don't tell you back then, we were attaching HIV cases to failed schools and successful in doing it, right? If a school had an F grade, that's the community that we would go and walk.
That speaks volumes.
And literally, Dana will tell you, we found cases there, probably more effectively than most folks in the state. We found them, and we went to school in that neighborhood. Big Chris would say, you remember Big Chris. Big Chris would say, Gene, let's go over there. You know, Dalton got a failing school. And I used to always wonder what Chris was talking about until I started going out and we started having success with this stuff. If a community had a failing school, it was more likely to have all of the other bad stuff that
The
came along with
disinvestment.
it.
It's the disinvestment.
And again, what President McClanahan was talking about. So it's not just on our people. Some of this stuff we have to be structurally.
Absolutely.
Has to change.
We got some things that we got control over.
We control some stuff. Like I don't know how to say, go home and raise your damn kids. I know some of y'all at work, right? And you don't control that. But y'all know who at work and y'all know who at Shala or at Bella Noche or the culture.
Exactly.
Y'all know what I'm saying. So don't twist it up because y'all get in the room for them white folks and then just want to start saying, well, some of them at work. I know which one of y'all at work. And I know which one of y'all not. And I know which one of y'all left work and went straight to Bella Noche. Took a little shower in the bathroom and got a shirt from Walmart.
Oh, let's talk about people. You know, we got
I've
a
done
lot
it.
of family. We got a lot of parents that's trying to be friends with their kids instead of raising their kids.
Right.
That's something that we really got to change.
Friends. At the President McClanahan, I don't get that because I ain't never been friends with my mama. I ain't friends with my mama today.
Not friends with my mama, no.
When she called me, it's instructional. Like it ain't like how you doing. She's like, why you ain't call me, boy? What you doing? Where them kids at? It's instructional to this day.
too.
You know, like when I talk to my dad, it ain't no talking back. It don't even make sense to talk back to him. He'll say, even I'm dogging on 40 now. He'll be like, what you talking about? Why you talking? And I'm like, well, man, I'm a grown. I don't care. Like,
And all you can say is,
it's
yes,
different.
sir.
Yes, sir.
That's it.
Yes, sir. No, sir. But you're right. Like, parents are out here now wanting to have conversations with these kids. I look at my kids ain't got no opinion.
That's right.
That's what it is. EC3, Malia, none of them ain't got no opinion. When I say go, and that's a wrap. But I don't know where that disconnect happened because that's how I was taught. And that's what it is. Like, you go to bed at a certain time, you gonna wake up at a certain time. Good grades are an expectation. You get a B in my house. I want to know how, because you ain't got no job. You ain't got nothing else to do.
So what's your plan to get to that A? Because we
there
need
you
that
go.
A right now.
'Cause that's what's expected. Because when you go to work, doing B work ain't gonna keep you there long enough, right? You're gonna have to get to A every now and again, right? So like, when we look at these issues, and President McClanahan, I'm glad he brought that up. Like, there's so many things that connect to this that we got to work on too. But at the same time, like, that does not negate personal responsibility
At
in
all.
this situation.
I'd like to know from SAT, the group, what triggers, your organization for going out? I heard you say you get a call and something happens, then we go into motion, Tell me about that process.
So when we respond to our dispatch calls, is what we call them, we get a notification to let us know, hey, there was a homicide or there was a shooting or major assault. And so Ms. Dana is the one that actually manages that side. So matter of fact, I'm going to let you explain that. That's on you.
So once we get the call, I call the team, notify them that, hey, just got a notification. If it's a possible shooting or a homicide, get on the scene, and then we do our roles. We're gonna see, we're gonna go to the family if the family is present. We're gonna make ourselves known to the family. Start immediately getting the information from them to follow up with them. And what that may look like is if the person is deceased, we're gonna connect them with Victims of Violence Services immediately. We're gonna also follow up with them after that, help them transition into the laying of the rest of the family members. But we also care about their mental health. So we have another side of another part of our group, which is the community navigators, and we put them with the community navigators, and in return, the community navigators connect them to community resources like counseling. And say, for instance, if they have younger kids, we may do something with schooling wrapped around that. It's just a lot of different parts.
So we have what's called comprehensive services, which is when we bring in the mentee or the participant, and we start a case with them. And in that process, we help them. That's when we start working on that accountability part, right? We help them to identify 3 goals. Let them set those SMART goals for themselves, and we help them to reach those goals. Now, our case cycles are short. They're 90 days up, we kick you out. That means 90 days, we try to set measurable goals that, they can reach in 90 days. If they can't, if it's something that requires more time, we definitely extend that time with them. But it's to start changing that mindset and getting people used to setting goals for themselves, following through on those goals, thinking through things and being more proactive rather than reactive. So that is, I think, one of the things that is important with the program. But on side of that, when we talk about going out to these dispatch calls, that's more of the reactive side of, what our team does. We have a lot of proactive measures that we do as well, like being in the schools before it even escalates to anything. Our job is to make sure that we're identifying what could be happening, because believe it or not, we think kids don't have a lot going on because they're kids. No, these kids are really dealing with some adult situations.
A lot of trauma.
And exactly. And a lot of times they just feel like they're not being heard. Plain and simple. So even if it's somebody that they don't know, if they think you care, they will talk to you. They will disclose to you what's going on with them. So to make sure that, we can help them to overcome some of those things, even if that means we have to refer them out somewhere else. We're not the police. We're not trying to be the police. We don't give information to the police. But what we do is try and be a complement to them, meaning we try to stop things from escalating. There's a lot of things that we'll never be able to disclose to the general public that this team does, because we get phone calls. It's based on relationships. A lot of times, you may know somebody that, is in them streets, but they ain't talking to no police. They ain't talking to, nobody they feel like is in authority, but they may call Dana, or they may call Liz, or they may call somebody else from our team and say, hey, look, this happening. And then our team responds to it. We might have to have a backroom conversation with a couple of folks, and you never know. A lot of times it ends in that particular issue not escalating to where it could escalate to. We got to start doing more of that. We have to, when I say we, I mean you, men, because we do need more men, and other organizations that's out here. We got to stop being afraid of our people and literally get in there and start loving on our people, holding our people accountable, holding ourselves accountable. We got to do that.
And so I'm glad you brought it up, because there's 2 points I pulled out of that. One, we got a lot of people that say they do work in our communities that can't walk our communities at night. And if you can't, then really what are you doing? Or do you really have a pulse on the community? You just out there talking stuff. And then, like I'm going to say this, right? Because some folks might not like that I said this, but
say it, Gene, say
I
it.
remember, when I was growing up, there were certain members of my family that did certain things, right?
And you knew
that. You knew that. And as a result, those members of my family, when I ran to get in their car, they'd be like, "Nah, man,
You can't roll with me on
roll
this."
with me." You know what I'm saying? And they love me, but they're like, "Look, your auntie gonna be around here in a little bit. She gonna take you." And I say that to say, don't be engaged in this foolishness and putting them babies in your car.
And that's real.
Like you know what I mean. And yeah, if you from those areas, you know what I mean. Maybe you don't like that I said it, but you know I ain't lying. But that was a thing that we once did in our communities. And you talked about it earlier. There were certain things you couldn't do on your block.
That's
we
right.
might have bought weed, but we couldn't buy it around us. We had to go somewhere else and buy it where they didn't know us, because somebody was gonna walk down there and tell them it's laws.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's just what it was. You couldn't. And our communities have gotten away from those rules, and right now we got babies and our elders dying in y'all crossfire.
Exactly.
Like, that's foolishness. That's dumb. And you can't tell me that this is good for business. No matter what you're doing, you can't tell me it's good for business. And I know you probably got somebody out there that's really making money that's mad as hell at y'all. Like,
Stopping the money.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I mean, you can't tell me this is good, but like get back to some of those simple things. If you out there doing the foolishness, don't put them children in your car. Don't put them children in harm's way. Like, if you know that's what you do, the child don't need to be at the party. Like, take them somewhere else. If you know that's what you do, make sure your family.
Hey,
good,
when
your
you make
family
them
safe.
kind of decisions for yourself, then you also need to make that decision of separation from your loved ones,
Yeah.
because you really and truly putting them in danger every time you make that decision to step out there with them. You got to do better.
I remember years ago that there were, I used to live in the park, and there were certain persons in the park, that were control the park, that were troublemakers, and you didn't step on them. But they over time they kind of died out, and died off, and those that were trouble got older, and so they didn't do the things they used to do. So now I'm quite sure in your work you've probably identified families or groups that control
The LTOs.
the streets.
Yeah. License to operate. That's what LTO
Okay,
means.
all right.
Yeah, and those are the people who control the neighborhoods. So when we having situations that may spill over, they're going to be the people who giving us a call. Those are going to be the people that we make connections with.
Okay.
Because it's about communication. If we can get back to us communicating with one another instead of picking up guns, instead of going and sit under your mama house to hurt you, just getting back to communicating, being able to get to the point where I care about you enough to not kill you.
Yeah, and that's so wild, because I remember growing up in my community, it was a normal thing. Like I remember my first fight, my daddy took me to it. Because this little boy had been messing with my sister, and my sister was something else, right? She wasn't scared of nobody, still ain't scared of nobody, right? And she had jumped up, wow, and this boy was maybe 4 or 5 years older than me, right? So he had ran me home, and so my sister was waiting there, and I already knew she was telling
Turn
my dad,
yourself on back around.
she ain't got ran home, and I was like, man, like, you had to tell him I'm around
Either
there
you
trying
gonna
to
get
defend
him
you,
or you gonna get your daddy.
Yeah, and my daddy walked me back around there, and made me fight, right? And he said, man, if you grow up a coward, you'll kill somebody, and that's just what it was. But our kids have gotten away from that. People that came in our streets and told us we shouldn't do that kind of stuff no more, right? When we know what used to work for us.
But then there's also a different dynamic, right? Because your daddy took you round there, and it was just gonna be between you and him. It wasn't gonna be no pistol play. It wasn't gonna be
It's a different
nobody jumping in. But nowadays, you can take your baby around there, talk about you gonna fight this person because they bullying you, and now you might have some pistol play, or now you might have 4, 5, 10 more people want to jump in. So our culture has changed significantly.
It's different. It's like, how did we get to that? How do we get there? I think the boy I got in the fight was one of my dad's friend's sons. Talking like we ain't doing that. Like,
Cigars, y'all can let us know.
yeah,
Fight, shake hands, y'all good tomorrow.
yeah. That's just what it was. Like, I look at some of my best friends in the world now.
That's
we
right.
got into tussles growing up. Like, but it was never a thing that ended in violence. It's just what it was. But I'm gonna go back to what my dad said. You grow up a coward, you'll kill somebody. We let too many of these young men grow up cowards. And it ain't nothing wrong with a butt whooping. You get your butt whooped, people gonna talk about you for a little while. Somebody gonna laugh at you. Hell, I might laugh at you, but you gonna live to
Fight another day.
It's just
Tomorrow
what it
you might
is.
win.
Keep fighting. Yeah.
There's very low value of life and other things that we hold dear. I envied to get to be old like my mother and grandmothers lived. My great grandmother lived to be 105. I'm just 50 something. Kids are not living that way. I remember my nephews, all his friends pretty much are dead when he was coming up, and my great nephews, their friends died early age. No one lives to be old anymore.
That's right.
It's
That's unfortunate.
Outside of that, you got your other ring rows of just health. So they don't even get to be unhealthy because they die healthy. Mm-hmm. And so it's a traumatic experience for our communities.
It's troubling. It's very troubling.
We have so many external factors too. You think about it. I remember, I grew up in the 90s, right? That was our heyday, right?
90s, no, Lord.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like an old man around here.
In the 70s, I'm like,
That was our heyday. Let me say that. I'm not going to say we grew up in the 90s. That was our heyday.
Before the 70s,
But, back in the 90s, there was a code. It was still a code. One of the things, don't get high on your own supply. Everybody doing drugs now. Don't get high on your own supply.
All right. Mikey can't sell bananas.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But now it's like that's acceptable. It's so many things that have changed and so many things that, are contributing to these things. We got so many drugs in our community, whether they are, pharmaceutical drugs or some other kind of drugs or some kind of synthetic drugs. There's so many of them. So our kids are walking around here in an altered state at all times. So it's hard for them to make better decisions because they're putting so many things in their bodies. How do we stop that? What do we do to stop that?
But like I said, I want to get your opinion on this, right? Because I know you're well versed in this topic. But how much is due to the fact that this ain't nothing but that first generation of kids that their mama just drugged them up. To get them checks.
Ooh,
you know what I'm saying? Let's just keep it real for a second.
NyQuil at night.
Yeah, them kids, when we started drugging them kids in school, they about my age now.
He's talking about them ADD kids. He's talking about me.
They're the Mady's baby. That's when we start seeing that stuff. So is it really surprising that they're turning to street narcotics now to manage their ailments? Is that really a surprise? Or should that have been expected when we started pumping these babies full of pills in the 80s?
That's an interesting concept that you just introduced here. And
never looked at it that way.
Right. So, I guess first answer, not so surprising. But still, that needs to be unpacked. Mm-hmm. Because that may be something that we just, like you said, never even thought about looking at.
Because when you look at, let's say, marijuana users, right? What does marijuana attack? Anxiety, right?
Yeah.
Sleeplessness, right? like so what a kid would have took a pill for when he was 10, that's probably my age now. Now he don't have that pill anymore, so he going to get something off the street, go and get some weed. He ain't been to the doctor in 20 years because men don't go to the doctor.
That's something else that got to be unpacked.
Yeah. And we don't believe in mental health in the black community, so if I'm having bad thoughts, I'm going to go to what I've always known, pump myself full of drugs.
Well, what role does law enforcement play in all this? We talk about, because some people think you need to have more police on the streets, you need to have more this on the street, but do they really have? I'm quite sure they do, but can we put it all on the police? The lack thereof?
No. That actually came up during our first public safety roundtable. Just having more police presence. Is that really what we need? That's the question. Is that really what our community need, or do we need to bring the village back? I think the answer is bring the village back. The having the police presence there and having police responses is just that's that reactive approach. That is that corporal punishment approach. We can do it in love, but we have to get back to doing that. That's us.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Zach, because we gave President Biden a hard time for that crime bill legislation when he was running for president. But let's talk about it in reality. Civil rights bodies went to him and asked for that legislation. Now we didn't know how it would be used, so we got to be very careful when
That's
we say,
right.
like,
Got to be careful.
We need the police presence because sometimes the police out there, and, we got to watch some of them. Not all of them, but we got to watch some of them. And so we have to be careful with it. I think that there is a shortage in officers, and I know we could use more officers, but got to be careful when you tote those lines. But then even if you get more police out there, right? The police are not out there giving out jobs.
Nope. They're not solving any of the problems we have.
You can't arrest your way out of it, as you say.
That's right.
You can't
I've heard Chief say that himself. You cannot arrest your way out of the problems that we're experiencing. You just can't do it. We just have to be real about solutions.
Yeah, and and y'all are doing some phenomenal work. Let me tell you, like when you hear about stuff, but because I ain't gonna lie, I used to hear about stuff first, but now when I talk to people, that they tell me they already talked to y'all. I'm calling y'all now, and that's really cool because you see people out there doing the work that's really out there with the people, like not in the meeting rooms, not in some Zoom group, but out there with the people, right? And that's cool to see, and big kudos. I know my brother over there ain't said much, but man, kudos to you, brother.
Man, Spence, I do. When we out there, Spence makes sure everybody good, like seriously, and he has a way in with community, and I think that's one of the most important components of our team. Is having that ability or having those built-in relationships, but also building new relationships. It's all relational. Every single thing that we do is relational. The only way we are going to get there is by building those relationships. You ain't gonna be able to come in and prescribe, a solution and say, this is what y'all need to do, because you just separated yourself from the community. But you do have to go into the community and say, hey, what can we do together, and mean that.
Yeah, and as we talk about crimes of proximity, that's the correct term. There is no such term as black on black crime. So
because it happens in every single ethnicity.
Community.
That's right.
Yeah, but it's crimes of proximity. We gotta work on the proximities, and that's what it boils down to. And, oftentimes, the NAACP, we can be attacked on some circles where folks saying, well, "What do y'all do about crime?" I'm like,
"What you doing about crime?"
That number one, but we actually do a ton around crime, right? It's just a lot of it doesn't always work or stick, but that doesn't mean that folks aren't out there trying.
That's right.
And with your team, like folks will say, well, we got the deadliest year ever, but I'm like, have you actually looked at crime around this country and underserved communities post-COVID and during COVID?
Exactly.
It's increasing everywhere. So the argument can be made, where would we be without the street team? Like, how bad would it really be without the street team? Because around the country, we're seeing staggering trends, right? So this isn't really surprising when you look at the trends of data around the country and underserved communities. You're seeing the same exact thing. So the argument can be made, like, if you didn't have those efforts, it probably would be much higher.
This is the other side of it. Like, you hear how these trends are happening in the areas that you've always expected, but you don't expect it to happen in places like Utah, Iowa, and all these other places, but they're experiencing it too. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is almost a pandemic in itself. Not even an epidemic. This is more like a pandemic because it's spreading everywhere. But I feel like the only way, again, I'm going to go back to the only way we're going to get through it is get through it together. Like, we got to be real about that. Like, you said something that I kind of want to jump back on. If you are a person that's saying, what are you going to do about the crime that we're experiencing, then you are a part of the problem. Period.
That part.
So when I hear people pointing fingers or asking somebody else what they're going to do, I'm going to always turn it back to you. How you going to help us? Because that's what this all boils down to. It's all of us. Not one of us, some of us, but all of us.
Yeah, and that we always tell folks, I think, FCC be damned. We always tell folks, sit your judgment last down unless you going to come help us. And if you ain't going to come help us,
that part,
please leave us alone.
Now, if you're out there and you don't know what to do, but you want to help, give us a call. We here for you. We going to help you help us.
Yeah, help you help us, because it's going to take us all. It's going to take everybody, and everybody working with different groups and different efforts. We ain't supposed to be the same. Some groups are.
That's right. We have different touch, different reaches, different influences.
Yeah, so I'm glad to see y'all doing the work. President McClanahan, any closing thoughts?
Well, Jen, I'm so glad we had this talk, man, because a lot of times we think about it, we talk about it in small circles. I might talk about it, to the mirror, but rather do we get and talk about it openly. These are the things we have discuss all the time. You know, we talk about a lot of crazy stuff. You know, we need to be talking about this in the Walmarts, at the Raising Cane line, you know, when you're in Macy's shopping, wherever you're shopping, whatever the case may be, because these things really do affect us. And
Absolutely.
when we stop talking about them, then we can say either we're part of the problem or the problem is solved. And I can tell you from my viewpoint of being 50-something, Jesus will come back to stop the problem. But until then, we have to do something other than just do nothing. So I applaud y'all for doing your part.
Thank you.
Thank you. The same here.
Terry, any closing thoughts?
Help us help you. Step up, period. I mean, like, don't be a sideline commentator. Be a part of the game. Jump in this game and help us turn this thing around. We can do this. We can do better. So let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, my brother, any closing thoughts? No, we got to have you back on, man. You got to talk more next time, man.
I'm not a real big speaker, but my closing thought is to just motivate everyone to find their strength and utilize your strength to be a part of the solution.
That's it.
No, I appreciate
Real,
you, bro.
real
Let me
talk.
tell you, man, just seeing my man Knowledge Tyson and you seeing brothers in this work is cool to see. So, man, I really glad to see you here and hope you stay around.
Appreciate it.
Ms. Dana,
Any closing thoughts?
any closing thoughts?
Community, stand up. I mean, show your people that you care. That's my closing thoughts. Just be there for one another. I don't care where you're from, the South, the East Town, to the Park. Stand up. Come together. Because nobody's coming to save us.
Period.
We have to save ourselves.
All right. So y'all been here with the NAACP presidents. This is your local branch president, Eugene Collins, alongside our statewide convention president, Michael McClanahan. We have some special guests here.
I do
today
have
from
one
the
thing. Can I
Baton
add
Rouge
one more
Street
thing
team.
to it?
Yeah, we're going to add one thing as I was doing my outro.
I'm sorry. That's always me. But I would be remiss if I did not give our mayor, props for actually, believing in this and supporting this endeavor. If it was not for Mayor Broom's Safe, Hopeful, Healthy program, we may not be here in this capacity. We would probably be here in other capacities, but not in this particular capacity. So I just want to give a shout out to her for, being a forward thinker and being able to invest in that.
Yeah, and Mayor Broom has been intentional about change. You to say what you want to about her, she's been intentional about change, and intentional about reducing violence in Baton Rouge. And Sat, we were having these conversations about violence intervention strategies.
Yep.
5, 6, 7 years ago now.
Absolutely.
So it's cool to see you pull it off, sister. It's really cool to see that.
To God be all the glory.
Amen.
Right.
All right. You've been here with NAACP presidents. Up next, we have Anthony Faulkner and Let It All Go. Talk to y'all next week.
Challenging times, but he can give you true peace of